Silence is one of the most powerful forces in human interaction, and absence has a way of making people think in ways that presence never could. When you remove yourself from someone's life, especially someone who is taking you for granted, their mind doesn't just register your physical absence. It begins to fill in the gaps with thoughts, emotions, and questions they never expected to have. At first, it may seem like your disappearance doesn't affect them. They go about their routine, doing what they always do, convinced that nothing has changed. But something has changed, and it's not just you who notices. It's them, even if they don't realize it right away. People often assume that their interactions with others are predictable, that relationships will continue as they always have, that communication will flow in the same patterns it always did. This assumption is where complacency sets in. When they are used to you being available, answering their calls, responding to their texts, showing up when they need you, they don't stop to question why you do it. They simply expect it. You become part of their reality, something they assume will always be there. But the moment you remove yourself from their life, the equation shifts. The balance of energy that once existed changes, and whether they acknowledge it or not, they feel it. Absence forces people to confront a void, a space they may not have even realized was occupied until it is empty. At first, they may not register it consciously. They may even welcome the silence, thinking it's a break, a temporary shift. They assume you will return, that things will go back to how they were. But time has a way of revealing the truth. And as the hours turn into days, their perception begins to shift. They start checking their phone out of habit, expecting to see your name. They glance at their notifications, waiting for that familiar message that never comes. And when they don't see it, their mind begins to wander. They tell themselves it's no big deal, that you're just busy, that this is nothing out of the ordinary. But as the silence stretches on, doubt begins to creep in. Why haven't you reached out? Are you upset? Have you moved on? The mind hates uncertainty. It seeks closure, explanation, understanding. And when none of those things are available, it does what it does best. It starts filling in the blanks. Suddenly they begin to recall the things they overlooked before, the kindness in your words, the way you made them feel seen, valued, appreciated, the energy you brought into their life. They remember the times you were there when they needed someone, the moments when your presence was comforting, even if they never expressed gratitude for it. And here's where the power truly shifts. Because now they're the ones wondering. They're the ones thinking about you, questioning your silence, analyzing your absence. The very person who once assumed they could have you at their convenience is now faced with an uncomfortable reality. You are not there anymore. And not only that, you are not coming back. At first, they may try to rationalize it. They may tell themselves they don't care, that this doesn't affect them, that they are just fine without you. But the subconscious mind doesn't operate that way. Because here's the truth. People don't miss the presence of another person immediately. They miss the impact of that presence over time. And the more time that passes, the more they realize what they have lost. Absence makes them reflect in ways that conversation never could. If you were to confront them, ask them directly why they treated you the way they did, they might brush it off. They might defend themselves, argue, deny. But when they are left alone with their thoughts, with no one to challenge or validate them, they are forced to sit with the truth. This is why distance is so powerful. It gives people the space to see what they could not see before. When you are constantly present, they don't have the opportunity to understand your value. But when you are gone, that value becomes undeniable. And what's even more significant is that this realization doesn't happen all at once. It happens in waves. One day, they may go about their routine as if nothing has changed. The next, something reminds them of you, a place you used to go together, a song you once talked about, a joke only you would understand. And in that moment, they feel it, that small pang of recognition, that unexpected pull of emotion. It doesn't matter how much they try to ignore it, the thought of you lingers. And here's where the irony comes in. What they once took for granted, they now crave. What they once dismissed, they now desire. But by the time they fully grasp this reality, the situation has already changed. Because you, the person they assumed would always be there, have moved on, and they are left with only their thoughts. In the beginning, when you remove yourself from someone's life, they often don't notice the full impact right away. They may feel a sense of relief, believing that space is exactly what they wanted. Maybe they think they are better off without you, that your absence doesn't change much, that life will continue as usual. The ego, after all, is quick to protect itself. It reassures them that everything is fine, that they made the right choice, that they are still in control. In those early days, the mind does its best to dismiss any thoughts of you. They occupy themselves with distractions, friends, work, social media, anything that fills the silence you left behind. Maybe they even tell themselves that this is what they wanted all along, that life is somehow lighter, easier, more enjoyable. And for a little while, they might actually believe it. But the mind is not so easily fooled. Even when people try to suppress their emotions, the subconscious keeps track of everything. It stores every moment, every memory, every habit that was once shared. And slowly, without them realizing it, those memories begin to resurface. At first, it happens in subtle ways. They may hear a phrase you used to say, a song you once played, or drive past a place you used to go together. In that instant, something shifts inside them. It's almost involuntary. The mind automatically associates those small triggers with you, and suddenly, for a brief moment, they are pulled back into the past. The ego steps in again, trying to push the thought away, convincing them that it doesn't mean anything. But deep down, something is beginning to stir. The absence that once felt like freedom now carries an unfamiliar weight. Then comes the realization that their world isn't quite the same without you in it. Maybe they notice a silence where there was once conversation. Maybe they scroll through their phone out of habit, expecting to see your name, only to be met with emptiness. That's when it begins, an internal conflict they didn't expect. Their mind tries to keep them in control, convincing them that they don't care, that this is nothing more than a phase. But emotions don't operate on logic. You were once a part of their life, and now you're not. And whether they want to admit it or not, that shift has left an imprint. The longer the silence stretches, the more uneasy they become. They start to wonder if you're thinking about them, if you're missing them the way they suddenly find themselves missing you. But here's the catch. While they are just beginning to process your absence, you have already moved forward. This is where the real shift begins. It's no longer about whether they miss you. It's about the fact that they no longer have access to you. And human nature has a way of desiring what it cannot have. Their mind starts playing tricks on them. They begin overanalyzing everything. Were you really that easy to replace? Why haven't you reached out? Are you already moving on? The uncertainty starts to eat at them. In the quiet moments, when there are no distractions, they begin to feel it even more. They sit with their thoughts, replaying old conversations, questioning past decisions. They start thinking about the way you used to listen, the way you used to care, the way you made them feel, things they didn't fully appreciate when they had the chance. And here's the irony. The same silence they once welcomed now becomes a source of discomfort. What started as indifference slowly turns into curiosity, then regret, than longing. The human mind is predictable in this way. When something is readily available, it's easy to overlook, but once it's gone, the value becomes crystal clear. And as more time passes, they begin to feel it deeper. They start wondering if you're happier without them, if you've truly let go, if you found something or someone better. At first, they tell themselves they don't need to know, but curiosity is relentless. They check your social media, hoping for a clue, a sign that you still think about them. They ask about you indirectly, trying to gauge where you stand. Every unanswered question fuels the growing realization that they may have underestimated what they lost. By now, the mind is no longer dismissing your absence. It is fully aware of it. It is analyzing, dissecting, trying to make sense of the emptiness they didn't expect to feel. And then it hits them. The freedom they thought they wanted, the space they believed was necessary, doesn't feel so freeing anymore. Instead, it feels like something is missing. And what's worse, they no longer have the power to change it. The longer you stay silent, the more their mind begins to shift. At first, they may have brushed off your absence, believing that life would continue without disruption. But as days turn into weeks, something deeper starts to settle in. A feeling they can't quite shake. An unfamiliar emptiness that lingers in the quiet moments when distractions fade. They might not even fully understand it yet, but they can feel it. And that feeling only grows stronger with time. It begins subtly. Maybe they go about their routine, expecting to feel normal, only to notice small details that suddenly stand out. Details they used to overlook. The way you always checked in, the effort you put into conversations, the way you truly listened when they spoke. These things seem minor when you are around, but now that they're missing, they create a noticeable gap. And that gap is not so easily ignored. The mind has a way of replaying moments when it senses loss. At first, they might try to resist it. They push the thoughts away, telling themselves that this is nothing more than a temporary shift, that they're fine without you. But emotions don't work on command. They don't just disappear because someone wills them to. And as much as they try to avoid it, your absence keeps creeping back in. They begin to wonder about you, even if they don't admit it. Are you thinking about them? Have you truly moved on? Do you even notice their absence the way they're starting to notice yours? These questions start as passing thoughts, but quickly become something more. Because the mind is relentless. It searches for answers, even when none are available. And this is where the power shifts. Because while they're stuck in this cycle of wondering, you are no longer where they left you. You've moved forward, you've redirected your energy, you've stepped into a space where their presence no longer dictates your emotions. And that realization is what unsettles them the most. What they once took for granted is no longer accessible. And for the first time, they begin to feel the weight of what they lost. Maybe they don't say it out loud. Maybe they still try to convince themselves that they are unaffected. But the signs are there. The subtle actions that betray their thoughts. They start checking their phone more often, scrolling through old conversations, rereading messages they once ignored. Maybe they hover over your name, debating whether to reach out, only to hesitate because they aren't sure where they stand anymore. The confidence they once had in your presence is gone, replaced by something they never expected. Doubt. Doubt is a powerful thing. It makes people second guess their choices. It forces them to reevaluate situations they once thought were certain. And in their doubt, they begin to see the truth that they were never as in control as they believed. That you were never as dependent on them as they assumed. That their absence in your life did not hold the weight they thought it would. They may try to regain that sense of control. Maybe they post something just to see if you react. Maybe they drop a casual message, something vague and meaningless just to test the waters. But when they get nothing in return, when they realize that their attempt at regaining power has no effect, the doubt deepens. They wonder what's changed, why you're not responding the way you used to, why their usual tactics no longer work. And in that wondering, they begin to feel something they never expected. Regret. Regret doesn't always come in grand gestures or dramatic realizations. Sometimes it comes in the quiet moments when they catch themselves thinking about you out of nowhere, when they realize they miss the sound of your voice, when they recognize that the connection they once had is no longer within reach. At first, they may not want to call it regret. They may tell themselves it's just nostalgia, just a passing thought. But the more they try to shake it off, the stronger it becomes. Because regret is not just about missing a person, it's about recognizing that they may have lost something truly valuable. And that realization is unsettling. Because by the time they truly understand it, they know deep down that they might be too late. When someone realizes that their usual influence over you has faded, an unsettling feeling begins to take root in their mind. At first, they may have assumed that time would restore everything to its original state, that eventually you would give in, reach out, or show signs of missing them. But as the days stretch on and nothing changes, their thoughts begin to shift in ways they never expected. The moment they notice that their absence in your life is not causing the reaction they anticipated, confusion sets in. They start questioning everything. Why haven't you reacted? Why haven't you tried to reach out? Why does it seem like you are fine without them? These questions are not just passing thoughts. They become a persistent hum in the background of their mind, growing louder each time they realize that you are not behaving the way they expected. Human nature is driven by the need for validation. When someone assumes they hold a certain level of importance in another person's life, they take comfort in the idea that their presence or even their absence will create an effect. But when that expectation is shattered, when they realize that you are not longing for them, not waiting for them, not even noticing them the way they assumed you would, an internal conflict begins to take place. It starts as frustration. Maybe they tell themselves that you are just being stubborn, that this is a game you are playing. They assume that you are holding back on purpose, trying to prove a point. But then as more time passes, that frustration turns into something deeper. Anxiety. Because suddenly the possibility creeps in. What if you're actually over them? What if you've truly moved on? At first, they may try to dismiss this thought, pushing it away as just an overreaction. But the longer they go without seeing any signs of your attachment, the more that anxiety starts to take hold. The mind does not handle uncertainty well. It seeks reassurance, control, predictability. But now they have none of that. All they have is an ever-growing sense of discomfort, a realization that they may have underestimated you. That realization does something to a person. It forces them to look at you differently. The power dynamic that once existed, the one where they assumed they had the upper hand, where they believed they had control over how you felt, is no longer in their favor. And this is when the regret truly begins to take shape. They start recalling things they barely noticed before. The way you were always there, the effort you made, the small details you paid attention to that no one else did. They begin to see how much you actually gave, how much energy you poured into the connection, and for the first time they recognize the weight of what they took for granted. And here's where it gets even more complicated for them. Because now they are not just dealing with missing you. They are dealing with the realization that you no longer need them. Nothing makes a person reevaluate their own importance more than seeing someone they once had easy access to become completely indifferent. Indifference is a silent message, a powerful shift in energy that speaks louder than any words ever could. When you no longer react, no longer seek validation, no longer show any sign of attachment, it disrupts the narrative they created in their mind. They start searching for signs that you still care. Maybe they check your social media, looking for clues, trying to decipher if you are still thinking about them. Maybe they bring your name up in conversations, hoping to get a glimpse into your mindset. They look for any indication that they still hold a place in your world, because if they don't, it forces them to confront an uncomfortable truth. They miscalculated. And the more they realize that you have detached, the more their thoughts begin to spiral. Because now it's no longer just about missing you. It's about the fact that they no longer have access to the version of you they once knew. The version of you that cared. The version of you that was invested. The version of you that would have responded. This is when they begin to wonder if they made a mistake, if they let something go that they should have held on to, if they pushed away someone who was actually irreplaceable. And that kind of regret doesn't just disappear, it lingers. It follows them in the quiet moments in the spaces where you used to exist, because now they are faced with a reality they never considered, the thought that maybe you were the one they should have fought for. The mind has a way of playing tricks on people when they realize they've lost something valuable. At first, they convince themselves that life without you is just an adjustment period, that eventually they'll stop noticing your absence. They distract themselves with other things, hoping that time will erase the void, but time doesn't erase what the heart still feels. And no matter how much they try to avoid it, the realization starts creeping in. The realization that your absence is not just a temporary phase, but a permanent shift. This is when the regret deepens. Because now it's not just about missing you, it's about understanding what they lost. It's about looking back and seeing all the ways they took you for granted. It's about realizing that the connection you had wasn't something ordinary, something replaceable. And once that realization hits, it becomes a weight they carry everywhere. At first, they try to fight it. They may distract themselves with new people, new experiences, anything that makes them feel like they are moving forward. But no matter what they do, something feels off. Nothing quite compares. The conversations lack depth. The laughter feels forced. The connection seems surface level. And that's when they understand something they didn't see before. You were not just another person in their life. You were someone different. The mind naturally seeks to restore balance when something feels wrong. So now they begin rationalizing. They tell themselves that maybe they just need closure. Maybe they need to talk to you one last time. Maybe if they reach out, everything can go back to the way it was. But deep down, they know the truth. They know that the version of you they once knew no longer exists. They know that too much time has passed, that too much has changed. And yet the thought of truly letting go terrifies them. They start remembering things they didn't appreciate before. The way you made them feel seen, the way you genuinely listened, the way you cared in a way that wasn't forced or transactional. They remember the way your presence brought them a kind of comfort they didn't even realize they needed. And now that comfort is gone. They might try to convince themselves that they can find someone else who will fill that space. But deep down, they know. It's not about finding someone new. It's about the fact that what they had with you was rare. And rare things once lost are not so easily replaced. They may even go through a phase of denial, telling themselves that it wasn't that deep, that they can move on just fine. But denial is just another form of resistance, another way the mind tries to protect itself from painful truths. And the truth is, they never expected to feel this way. They never thought that your absence would have this kind of effect on them. This is when the regret transforms into something else, a longing for what can no longer be undone. They start wishing they had done things differently. Maybe they should have treated you better. Maybe they should have valued you more. Maybe they should have put in more effort. And the hardest part, realizing that it's too late. By now, they have played every scenario in their mind 100 times over. What if they had just communicated better? What if they had appreciated you when they had the chance? What if they had given instead of always taking? These what ifs become an endless loop, a mental trap that has no resolution, because no matter how much they analyze, no matter how much they wish they could go back, reality remains the same. You are no longer there. And it's not just your presence they miss. It's who they were when they were with you. Because whether they admit it or not, you brought out a version of them that they can't seem to find anywhere else. A version that was understood, that was accepted, that was seen. Now they are left with nothing but memories. They replay old conversations in their mind, wondering if there were signs they missed, moments where they could have made different choices. They scroll through old messages, trying to feel some sense of connection to what once was. But messages don't replace presence, and memories don't replace reality. The hardest part of losing someone isn't just their absence. It's knowing that they are still out there, living, growing, evolving, but without you. And that's the part that lingers the most. Because once they realize that life has moved forward for you, that you are no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer even looking back, they understand something they never considered before. They were the ones who let go, but you were the one who truly left. The realization of true loss does not come all at once. It creeps in gradually, in moments of quiet when there are no distractions, no noise to drown out the thoughts they have been avoiding. At first, they may have convinced themselves that your absence was insignificant, that they could carry on as if nothing had changed. But the mind is not easily fooled. Over time, it forces them to confront what they have been running from. The emptiness that has taken root where you used to be. They begin to feel it in the smallest ways. In the moments they expect a message from you but receive nothing. In the silence that lingers where your voice once filled the gaps. In the realization that they can no longer reach out without wondering if they will even receive a response. It's a subtle but undeniable shift. One that eats away at their sense of certainty, because before they never had to wonder. They never had to doubt where they stood with you. But now they are not so sure. And doubt is a powerful thing. It makes them question their choices, their actions, their assumptions. They start replaying past conversations, analyzing moments they once brushed aside. They wonder if they were too careless, too dismissive, too confident that you would always be there. The more they think about it, the more they realize how much they took for granted. And that realization, it doesn't just sting, it lingers. Because now it's not just about missing you. It's about understanding that they may have lost something irreplaceable. At first, they might have thought they could fill the void with other people, other distractions, but nothing quite fits the same way. The conversations lack depth. The connections feel shallow. No one else understands them the way you did. And no matter how much they try to move forward, something always pulls them back. Memories, regrets, the weight of what they let slip through their fingers. Regret has a way of turning into longing. They start searching for pieces of you in other places, hoping to recreate what once was. Maybe they go back to old photos, old messages, scrolling through moments frozen in time, trying to feel something, anything that connects them to you. Maybe they find themselves checking your social media, hoping to catch a glimpse of your life, wondering if you ever think about them the way they think about you. And that's where the realization deepens. Because while they are still caught in this cycle of wondering, hoping, regretting, you have already stepped into a new chapter. And that realization, it shakes them to their core. Because for the first time, they are forced to confront a truth they never wanted to face. Life did not stop for you when they walked away. You did not crumble, did not beg, did not linger in the past. You moved forward. You grew. You became someone even stronger, someone even more self-assured. And that is the hardest pill for them to swallow. They thought their absence would leave you lost. They assumed their presence was something you couldn't live without. But now they see the truth. You didn't just survive without them, you thrived. And that realization is what shifts everything. It turns their regret into something much heavier. Because now they are not just longing for what they lost. They are grieving the version of you that once cared. The version of you that would have waited, that would have held space for them. But that version of you no longer exists. And they know that no matter what they do, no matter how much they wish they could turn back time, some things cannot be undone. They may reach out, testing the waters, hoping to find even a trace of the connection they once had with you. Maybe they send a message, something simple, something casual, pretending like nothing has changed. But when you don't respond the way they expect, when they sense that your energy has shifted, that you are no longer emotionally available, the reality of what they lost fully sinks in. And that's when it hits them the hardest, because now they finally understand they did not just lose a person. They lost someone who truly cared, someone who saw them, understood them. And now that you are gone, they see the truth they ignored for so long. Losing someone like you is not just a passing regret. It is a mistake that will haunt them long after you have moved on.